Amador County's local commercial television station proudly presents radio talk show host Mark Montgomery and The Mark Montgomery Show, now on TSPN TV and TSPNTV.com. Fighting for small business, The Mark Montgomery Show.
Welcome to the show. I'm Mark Montgomery, and just like I've said before, you can hear me on the radio in Sacramento on Money 105.5 in the morning from 7 to 9, Monday through Friday, and that's Money 105.5 FM on the dial, and on Saturday mornings, 1380 KTKZ from 8 to 10 every Saturday morning, with the exception of the upcoming Memorial Day weekend. I'm taking a few days off. But you know what's been fascinating, and we're going to get to it in just a few minutes, is the state budget. 17, at least they're projecting potentially $17 billion in the red here in the state of California. So we're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes. But I want to get a couple of other things out of the way. A while back, in one of the shows that I did, months ago probably, we were talking about various organizations that you belong to. They could be chambers of commerce. You could be involved in, and I'm going to talk about for a moment, the Race for the Cure with the Komen organization. And the deceit, the deception, the untruthfulness that these organizations engage in when they're taking your dues or your donations for their cause. And, of course, I've talked about the Sacramento State Chamber of Commerce. Even this morning, there was a meeting, a breakfast meeting, somewhere up between 600 and 1,000 people attended. I don't know what the statistics are going to show, but it was the State Chamber of Commerce, the California Chamber of Commerce, and they had a breakfast meeting with Jerry Brown as their main speaker this morning. Now, I wasn't there. I'm hearing about this secondhand, but number one, Jerry Brown was late for this meeting. To me, this again goes back to showing respect for the business, the private sector, you know, in California. And the second thing was that he dealt in platitudes, typical smoke and mirrors, not really giving any solid information. But the one question I have out of this whole meeting, and frankly on the way up here, I was listening to Eric Hogue, Capital Hour on 1380 KTKZ. I wasn't getting great reception. I couldn't participate in the program. But he was talking about this particular meeting. And I would have liked to have asked him a question, because a while back, the State Chamber was talking about they didn't like a couple of the tax increase proposals. However, on Jerry Brown's tax increase proposal, they were neutral. Now, my problem is how can a business organization that represents California businesses, now I understand the State Chamber is more big business, and so they're going to play both sides of that fence to a point. But big business in the state of California isn't the problem. It's that small business has been just crushed in California. Entrepreneurship, the regulations, mandates, fees, the uncertainty of the California economy has devastated business in this state. So my question is, and I would have liked to have called the Eric Hogue Show today and asked him this simple question: is the State Chamber still neutral? That I just don't understand. So I just wanted to mention that quickly, but this also goes back to something else, and that is there was the Race for the Cure, the Komen organization in Sacramento here a couple of weekends ago. And I always get caught up in this going to the radio station on that particular Saturday morning. But I wondered at the time, as I was going into the radio show that Saturday morning, I wonder what their attendance is going to be after the big flap, which frankly it should have been a bigger deal than it was the last few years. But more and more people have been paying attention. I have been harping on this for a number of years now, that people need to pay attention to what their organization does. Where does the money go? When you pay your dues to an organization, what are they doing with it? What are they supporting with that money? Do you agree with that support? And if you don't, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to speak with your feet, and that is leave? That's what I would suggest, because these organizations, unless you take a stand and stand up for yourself, they're just going to take your dues and do whatever they want. Now, the Komen organization, a couple of years ago, they were found out to be donating to Planned Parenthood. Now, I don't care which side of the fence on that you're on. Doesn't make any difference to me. That's not the issue. The issue is they didn't let everyone know in their organization that would go and walk or run miles to donate to the Komen organization. It was that they were not upfront. They were not transparent with folks to let them know where their money was going. If you're out there and you're putting in that sweat and you're running those miles and you're donating money into an organization, don't you believe that you have the right to know where your money is going, what they are supporting? But it was some news agencies that actually came out with the news. The Komen organization was hardly upfront with this. Matter of fact, they tried to cover the whole thing up. They said, well, what we do is we give the money, we give millions to Planned Parenthood, and I'm not talking about this as a social issue. That's not what I'm talking about here. I stay away from social issues. This is about transparency and being honest as an organization. And state chambers are I just say chambers in general, chambers of commerce and many organizations are not upfront with where your money is going. And I encourage you to ask questions. But in this example, Komen came back and says, well, we give to Planned Parenthood, nothing to do with abortions or anything of that nature. This money actually goes so when a person comes in and needs a mammogram, then it's paid for. Well, come to find out, none of the Planned Parenthood facilities has mammogram equipment. So they couldn't do these examinations. So what they would do is send the woman out to another location and then pay for that particular mammogram. My question would be, as I said at the time, then why doesn't Komen just do that up front and pay the actual facility that is giving the examination? They were playing games with this money. Well, their attendance is way, way down. Now, last year, they had an approximate 25,000 attendees, and this is just Sacramento participating. And this year, they had approximately 18,000 actually run in the event. And it may have been close between 18 and 19,000 actually run in the event. That is a substantial hit. Somewhere around 5,000 less people participated. So they're being somewhat deceitful on this, has hurt their earnings potential, their participation across the board. Because so many people finally found out through the news media that they were actually giving to organizations that they truly did not believe in. So the reason I'm bringing that up is, as business owners, as small business owners, and just public in general, if you are making contributions to what you might believe to be a small business organization that's truly going to fight for you, represent you, stand up for you, then you need to look under the blankets. You need to peel back those layers of onion and see truly what they're supporting. And one way to do that is, during this year, being an election year, is pay attention to where their money and their endorsements are going. Who are they endorsing? I bring that up because the Sacramento Metro Chamber a couple of years ago endorsed Daryl, what I call Daryl Spinberg, which is a big, of course, for anyone that knows him, he's supported by the unions. He's a big tax, big government type person, has never really supported small business. Same thing with John Perez, as I call, a.k.a. Pickpocket Perez in the Assembly. All big government, tax and spend, progressive liberals. Yet the SAC Chamber supported a Doris Matsui and a Daryl Spinberg, both being big government, big spender type people. Why would a business organization do that? I quit the SAC Metro Chamber. I quit. I'm not going to support something like that because they're not supporting me. They're using my dues because they want access, as they said, over their principals. So I would suggest that you belong to organizations that don't just go for access and talking, that you go for an organization that believes in action. And if those doors are not open from our legislators, then knock them down. That's how it should be working. They represent us. They work for us. It's not the other way around. So if you're not getting their attention, speak with your feet, folks, and only participate in organizations that truly support you. So with that said, when we come back from the break, Governor Brown declares May Small Business Month. Now, this is absolute, tremendous support for small business. Absolutely the best possible way to turn California around is to declare a month, Small Business Month. Now, what will happen probably another month or two, Darrell Spinberg will step forward and he'll declare Small Business Week. And then maybe another month or two after that, Pickpocket Perez, he'll step forward and declare it is Small Business Day today. So that's how they work it. This is, they toss these platitudes out and say that we are in full support, we understand small business, we're supporting you, we're going to do the things necessary to create jobs in California. It's all words, folks. There's no action, it's all smoke, there's no fire. They do not represent you, they represent the big unions and the environmentalists, and that's about it. So with that said, we'll be right back after a short break. You're listening to Mark Montgomery right here on TSPN TV.
The Mark Montgomery Show. You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader, TSPN. And now back to the Mark Montgomery Show on Amador County's local commercial television station, TSPN.
Welcome back. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we're going to talk about state budget, if you believe we have a budget. Now, last year, I distinctly remember this. I talked a great deal on the radio about this. The legislature submitted a budget. Jerry Brown says the budget was not balanced, and he vetoed the budget. John Chang decided not to cut checks for the legislators, the lawmakers, because they didn't pass a balanced budget. So they had to go back to the drawing board. Each legislator lost something like around, I think it was close to $4,800, something of that nature, and boy, they were screaming like stuck pigs because they couldn't live without this money. Now, you and I can live without money because they keep taking more and more out of our pocket, but boy, you take a few pennies away from the lawmakers, and they are screaming. So what did they do? Boy, we got to get paid. So what they did is they sent an absolute balanced budget to Jerry Brown. It had to have been balanced because that's what the law said. They didn't get paid unless they submitted a balanced budget to Jerry Brown. Now, in the first submission, Jerry Brown says it wasn't balanced. He vetoed it, sent it back, and supposedly they came back with a balanced budget. A budget that's going to work. Now, of course, they found this hocus-pocus money, this imaginary tooth fairy money. That's what they found. I think Jerry Brown's been talking to the tooth fairy, matter of fact. So he's got it all figured out. It must have been balanced because Jerry Brown signed it. And voila, we had a balanced budget. Matter of fact, the newspaper were saying, great job. The SAC-B, and of course, you know, they're, of course, a conservative newspaper. They were saying, great budget, this should work. Yeah, but there's a few questions on it, may not work, but boy, they did a good job. Well, as far as I'm concerned, the lawmakers should have to pay all that money back from last year. They shouldn't have been paid for all these months because they pulled the wool over Californians' eyes. And what a surprise. What a surprise. Now, how many budgets have we had over the years that was not balanced, that we're always overspending. Let's see, can I remember a balanced budget? That's right, zip. So you would think that they would actually try hard because they weren't going to get paid to actually truly get down to work. Wasn't that the intent of that initiative? Wasn't that the intent of the law, to withhold pay if we didn't have a balanced budget? I think so. And yet we still didn't get one. Matter of fact, we got a horrible budget. And you would think after all these years they would get a little better at it. But they really don't want a budget, folks. The idea is to create a crisis every single year, because if they didn't want the crisis, they would continue month after month after month, tweaking the numbers, looking at the numbers, developing an ongoing budget to try and get this state back on solid fiscal footing. But they won't do it. Once they pass the budget, it's often passing, I don't know, bills like, well, tying minimum wage to the consumer price index. Something else that could potentially kill jobs. Let's see, we need Obamacare for sure in California. Even if the Supreme Court turns it down, we really need it here in California. And oh yeah, we need to support cap and trade so we can take billions more from business in California. Those are the important things. Budget's not important. We need a crisis. Why? So we can pass all these other things and try to force Californians into raising taxes. Back in around, and I've actually tried to find it over the last few years. It's not available. It's gone. I'm sure it's been erased. I'm sure the progressive left has found every possible soundbite having to do with this open mic back in around 2002, 2003, somewhere in there, that there was an open mic, behind closed doors, Democratic conference. And they were talking about if we continue to raise if we continue to spend more than what we take in, and we constantly basically operate through crisis when it comes to the budget and spending money, we will force, sooner or later, the California voter will realize they have to raise taxes. We will force them into raising taxes. And boy, I tell you, I've tried every which way to find that soundbite, because I would love to replay it every day as part of my bumper music. And I'm still trying. And I plan on taking even some of Jerry Brown's words and Darrell Spinberg's and Pickpocket Perez's and start using those words against them, because they are not looking out for you and I, folks. This is all about unions and environmentalists and money and their next position. It's not about California. It's about them. So what does Jerry Brown say about now being, and of course it started off at one time, we might be around $2.5 billion in the red. And then it was maybe $4 or $5 billion in the red. And then it was $9.7 billion or something in the red. And then it's $15.7 billion in the red. And now Legislative Analyst Office is basically saying that we might be above $17 billion in the red. Now that doesn't sound like a balanced budget to me. And when, as California voters, are we going to hold these morons' feet to the fire? These idiots. And that's exactly what they are. Many of them are well educated. They're attorneys. There are some good people that are lawmakers, folks. Don't get me wrong on this. There are some people that try to do the right thing, but they're a minority, and very few are going to stand up to Pickpocket Perez and Darrell Spinberg, because they don't want that closet office. They don't want their budgets being cut in half. They don't want their staffs cut in half. They want committee assignments. They want to be relevant, and they can't be relevant if they don't follow the party line, period. So you can vote. There's an organization right now, and I totally disagree with it because, again, they're misleading people, and this gets back to what I was talking about earlier on organizations. Their goal is to elect 6 Democrats to the legislature. That's their goal. Now, how do I know this? Because they said it right in one of my meetings to me. They tried to hijack one of my meetings and tried to basically say we need to elect 6 Democrats because that's the only way we're going to change California. How in the world are you going to change California by giving the Democrats a supermajority? You think you're safe with Proposition 13, This is their goal, the initiative process and Prop 13. If they have a super majority, and they're close to getting it, folks, watch out on Prop 13, because here's the goal. They want to change the initiative process. And I'm getting a little off the budget here, but this is important stuff. If the Democrats, and I'm saying the progressive liberals in this state, get a super majority, what they will do is try to change the initiative process itself. One of the things they are interested in doing is controlling the initiative process. So, for example, we want an initiative put on the ballot. It would have to be approved. The wording, it would have to be approved that it's worthwhile for the state to get it on the ballot. The second thing is that they want the right, and this is huge because this is where Prop 13 could be overturned. They know it's popular. But if they have that supermajority, what they can do is they can basically push out there and say, look, we will have the right that within 10 years following any initiative's passage, in other words, maybe there's an initiative they don't really like, maybe it's pension reform. Let's take pension reform as an example. We pass pension reform, and the unions don't like it whatsoever. It really starts rolling it back. And look at Wisconsin and what's happening back there. So they may have to put up with that for 10 years, but after 10 years, they have a right to void the initiative or change it. Now, are you really interested in giving that kind of control over to the progressive liberals? And if you're not, you'd better pay attention. And, you know, I always say to election local, not anymore. Because it's that person out of San Diego or Los Angeles that might just put it over the hump, giving them a majority, a super majority. So money that you might donate to an election, a local election in the Los Angeles area, might mean the difference between whether they get a supermajority or not, rolling back Prop 13, changing the initiative process, and all the various things that they are going to manipulate and push for. Already, folks, and I know people hate it when I say this, but you are living in a socialist state, whether you like it or not. Now, there was just an election, for example, in France, and Francois Hollande, or Hollande, however you say his last name, was elected. He is a professed socialist, the first since Mitterrand. Well, what's amazing to me is that if you look at his agenda and how he won election in France, because they don't want the austerity that they were going to be faced with, which they haven't gone the austerity route yet, but they're afraid of it. They want all their government benefits. But if you look at the campaign, it's identical to what President Obama is saying and what we hear in this state daily. We are a socialist state. So this gets right back to the budget problems that we have today. It's because of being at that socialist state that we have these budget deficits. So optimistic projections led to the dramatic surge in California's budget deficit. It wasn't optimistic projections. It was just hocus-pocus politics is what it was. Smoke and mirrors. Agenda, ideology-driven. That's all this was about. So it goes on, for example, in this particular article, Jerry Brown announced Monday that the state budget deficit had grown by a remarkable 70% since January. Remarkable. Fiscal experts said the economy had little to do with it. The economy didn't really have anything to do with it. The lawmakers had everything to do with it, with their ideology and their agenda. So anyway, when we come back from the break, we're going to continue talking about the budget, what we can do about it. And matter of fact, Jerry Brown appeared on Charlie Rose, and that was quite an interview, and we're going to talk about that and a lot more when we come back from the break. And again, you're listening to Mark Montgomery, and you can hear me on Money 105.5 during the week, it's Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays, 1380 KTKZ from 8 to 10. So we'll be right back, and we're going to be talking about the state budget.
You're watching Amador County's #1 news and sports leader, TSPN. And now back to the Mark Montgomery Show on Amador County's local commercial television station, TSPN.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Mark Montgomery, and we're talking about the state budget. You know, 16, 17 billion in the red, and they're making every excuse. Well, our projections were just too optimistic. The economy, business, income didn't cooperate. It's anything and everything as an excuse, except what the real excuse is they didn't do their job. It was all about them. It was all about keeping the old crisis going, so they try to get more and more money for the unions, retirements, and the real big gorilla in the room, and no one's talking about it. If they get their tax increase, it's all going to go to pay for pensions anyway. And tuitions will continue up. Students will continue having to borrow more. That's why the federal government took over the student loan program, because they could just keep feeding money, get the students to borrow more money as tuitions continue to climb, just create that vicious circle, pay into the benefits, the health care and the retirement accounts. It just is one big vicious circle sucking more and more money out of not only our pockets, our kids' pockets into the future. Where is it going to end? I'll tell you where it has to end. And that's with you and I and how we vote. Can California be turned around? Absolutely. If we can just get people to truly think beyond agenda and ideology, stop allowing big money coming out of the unions to dictate the thinking of people. If people would just realize if they just use logic and common sense, they can see through these things and research for themselves and stop believing the papers like The Bee and MSNBC and ABC and NBC and CNN and these organizations, and think for themselves. So anyway, Jerry Brown, they're saying, well, the budget, we were just a little overly optimistic. And you know what was pretty interesting today was that, I'm going to see if I can find my article here, there was an article this morning, and there was a great word, and I talked about it this morning on my radio show. And this was an article by Bruce Mayman, and it was in Viewpoints in the Bee this morning. And he came out, and I'll just read a paragraph here to you. It says, he goes on to say, he says, ever heard of hopium? And I thought, well, it sounds like opium, but it's hopium. And I caught the word because I hate the word hope. What is hope? We're going to hope and change. We hope we can change things. We hope we have balanced the budget. We hope we can do these things. So it absolutely has no meaning. So anyway, Bruce Mayman created the word hopium, and he says that's the drug California lawmakers are on whenever they sit down to craft a state budget. They're addicted. It says the morning hangover follows with phrases like optimistic projections, not as high as expected, lower than hoped for, failed to materialize, gap between projected revenues and anticipated expenditures. We know the basic working parts. A budget deficit that went from $9.2 billion in January to $15.7 billion last week, and the nonpartisan Legislative Analyst Office said it could rise even higher. They're projecting above 17. Says we also knew the systemic problems, a legislature at loggerheads, revenue streams dependent on highly volatile taxation metrics, and citizens passing pie-in-the-sky initiatives with crippling unintended consequences, making them no better than the lawmakers they despise. But a simple lesson lies in what Governor Brown said to Charlie Rose on CBS this morning last Friday. Rose asked him, what happened? Jerry Brown responded, oh, it's very simple. We're not fortune tellers, and we don't have clairvoyance. Well, there you are. There's Jerry Brown. Perfect answer. Meaning nothing. They don't know what the heck they're doing. And don't make that mistake. They do know what they're doing. They know exactly what they are doing. And I've said so many times before on my show is that we're really seeing actually a very well-played good cop, bad cop scenario in the Capitol. Jerry Brown is playing the good cop. He knows that the legislature over here is going to be the bad cop, and he's allowing the unions to be the bad cop. Jerry can say whatever he wants. We're going to fix those unions. We're going to get more money to the schools. Pass my tax increase, and we'll get $9 billion or whatever it is to the schools. Kids' tuition will go down, blah, 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 blah. And he knows better, folks. He knows the legislature is never going to do it. Where is the pension reform? It should already be done. But no, we get things like Minimum wage increase is tied to consumer index. It can go up, but the wages, the minimum wage can go up. This is Louis Alijo submitted this bill. Wages can go up, but if the price index comes down, the wages can't come down. It's a one-way street. This is their idiotic thinking, and you vote for them. So anyway, it goes on. Then why does everyone keep basing budgets on future projections that are overly optimistic? Well, folks, they don't want to balance the budget. They can't take the hit. They're afraid, gosh, you may wake up and realize they are progressive Democrats. And I say that because there's a difference between a Democrat, what might be a moderate Democrat, and progressive liberals. It says the cuts will pass not because they must, but so lawmakers can say they're serious about deficits, thinking it'll bolster their ensuing, far more important sales pitch, the passage of a November tax increase. And they'll have an added weapon in that fight, you. They want their tax increases, folks. And Jerry Brown went to the initiative process to do this. They already had the votes. All they do is send it out to all the union members, and they sign it, and they've got their initiative on the ballot. That is what you and I need to do. We need an organization, and I'm forming it right now, Friends of Small Biz Talk Radio, to take a radio show and even this TV show and take it throughout the state. Why? Because we need to be educating and get other small businesses on board, and we need to educate the public on a consistent basis on what's really going on here in California. One of the weaknesses we have in communications here in California is this. If you listen to most of the radio stations now, you listen to much of the main broadcast, on television. What is it? It's national. It's national. You get a blip on local news, that's fine. But most of it on the radio are national syndicated shows talking about the big umbrella issues. They're talking about federal issues, national issues. Now, I ask you, if you vote in today's election, or the upcoming election in November in California, and you vote, and I'm going to say, you go ahead and let's say you're going to vote for Mitt Romney. It's not going to do you any good. No good. California will vote for Obama. All those delegates are going to go for Obama. So you may want to change the national scene, but your vote in this state is not going to change anything. Now, with that said, where can you make changes? You can make changes right here in California. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. If we focus on California, we need actually more talk show hosts, as far as I'm concerned, doing what I'm doing. And I'm just a small business owner. My intent was never to do what I'm doing right now. But I am fed up with people being manipulated. I am fed up with people not really being presented the facts and what's really going on behind the scenes. Now, when I first started on radio, I thought I kind of knew a lot. I really do read a lot. I pay attention. Always have. But let me tell you something. I knew nothing. I have learned so much. And you know what? It's not better. It's worse than what I thought. It's more corrupt than what I thought. It's more insidious than what I thought. It's everything that I didn't think about. It's horrible on what they are doing to society. And this isn't because of Republican or Democrat. This is just an agenda. It's progressive liberals, folks. It's a progressive program. Progressive is socialist, and it goes further than that. That's what it's all about. On the surface, it can sound good. Well, we want help for people, and that's where you get sucked in. Is we're for everybody. Well, let me put it how far this might go. Someday, if you don't stop this movement, you'll definitely be working with people in a commune, because that's where these people came from in the hippie era. They loved their communes. Everybody for everybody else. And the thing is they are in power right now. So many of these people went into politics. And we are seeing their agenda being played out right now. So anyway, Charlie Rose. Talking about the state budget, Jerry Brown was on Charlie Rose here the other day, and we'll continue this after our break. But California's budget problems linger while many other states shape up. So Charlie Rose, everybody is talking about California's problems. Most other states, especially the right-to-work states, folks, are coming out of this. They're creating jobs. Texas rates #1, North Dakota. Matter of fact, the leading city in jobs, the growth is in North Dakota. It's absolutely amazing. And yet we have towns, all the major metropolitan areas in California rank last in the list of metropolitan areas economically, in unemployment, etc. We have cities right here in California that have 24% unemployment. It's horrible. It's worse than Greece. So California's budget problems linger while many other states shape up. It says the pile-on was in full effect within hours of Governor Brown's announcement this week that California's budget deficit had grown to 15.7. So California's Financial Apocalypse magazine offered a concise guide. It says Fox News played the Red Hot Chili Peppers and Californication, and host Greg Gutfeld proclaimed Brown captain of the Titanic that is California, a state so broke it may ask Greece for a loan. On Friday, the Democratic governor slapped back on national TV, and boy, I tell you, Jerry Brown really slapped back. It was powerful. He did just an incredible job. I can see it now. Businesses are going to be flocking into California because of what Jerry Brown said on Charlie Rose. And if you believe that, I got oceanfront property in Arizona for you, because Jerry Brown really blew it. We're going to talk about his interview on Charlie Rose just as soon as we come back. I'm Mark Montgomery.
And now back to the Mark Montgomery Show on Amador County's local commercial television station, TSPN.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Mark Montgomery. We're talking about the California budget now being approximately, all said and done, it's going to be $17 billion in the red. And Jerry Brown went on Charlie Rose's show here a few days ago and talked about the budget. And Charlie Rose asked him a question. It said, Brown's revised deficit estimate released last Monday already was 70% greater than he projected in January. In an interview taped Thursday, Charlie Rose asked him what happened. Well, again, Jerry Brown responded, and he says, well, it's very simple. We're not fortune tellers. We don't have clairvoyance. Pat answer, I guess. Says the Wall Street Journal chided with the headline, California ugly, with the state tax collections ticking up nationally last year. The newspaper scolded, California can't seem to keep up despite one of the highest tax rates in the land. We are taxed almost more than any other state in the land. We can't be competitive even with Arizona or Texas, let alone China or India or anyone else. So where's that going to take us, by the way, folks, in the future? We have rising health care, educational expenses, you name it, it's rising. And how can it rise if supply and demand isn't working? In other words, if the demand is not there, how can those costs continue to rise? It doesn't really make any sense. If people don't have any money, jobs are not being created, and 1 out of 2 college graduates can't find a job, and the other half is underemployed. In other words, they can find a job, but they're not being paid. They can hardly afford to pay back their student loan. We've got huge problems here in California on into the future. They don't see it because they don't want to see it. So it goes on. It says, in California, Brown has tied his budget proposal to a November ballot initiative to raise taxes. Why is it that the governors that are actually really getting down to balancing their budget, cutting where they have to, they're not raising taxes, they're cutting to give more incentive to businesses to expand and grow and getting rid of things that are hampering businesses. Now here in California, it all has to do also with uncertainty. When you look at all the proposals and all the bills, and a huge one right now is AB 32 being implemented, the cap and trade tax. This is going to suck billions of dollars out of the economy in California, flowing into the government, supposedly billions of dollars. Let me tell you right now, they aren't going to get half the money they expect out of it. Why? Business is going to take off. They're going to leave. They're going to close down. And you may say, well, these big corporations, they deserve it. Who's going to pay for this? You are, in consumer product prices. It has to be passed along. So again, it's another hidden tax, and they're just euphoric over this going to be played out. Now, so how do they compete with other states that have cap and trade? That's right. No other state has cap and trade. Only California. 30% plus of our energy comes from out of state into California, much of that coal-fired. That is going to give you tax through the wazoo right here in California. Carb taxes, credits they're going to have to buy and trade. And it's all going to be manipulated, folks. And it's all about creating billionaires off of your money, my money, and what we pay into the economy. It's going to just kill jobs in this state. They've been saying this for a number of years, and yet CARB is just set on implementing it, folks, and they will. Why? You voted for it. AB 32. You voted for it, you got it, and it is going to put a big hole in your wallet. So it goes on, it says, Brown told Rose on Friday that he is going to campaign hard for his tax measure. There's just no other way. We have no other option. That he has to do so at all is evidence of the unusually tricky politics confronting Brown. The Democratic majority in the legislature, now here's another one, folks. The Democratic majority in the legislature is resistant to spending cuts. Yes, they are. While the Republican minority is large enough to block tax increases. California is one of just a handful of states that requires a supermajority of the legislature to raise any taxes. Thank goodness. But here's what they say. Here's what Brown says. The problems could be solved in California with a majority vote. So, see, this is the other angle. Because we just can't get this budget balanced, well, it's all the Republicans' fault. If we just had a majority vote, so we could just pass whatever we wanted here in California, and that's what they're aiming for, by the way, then all of these problems would go away. Well, of course they'd go away. Because they'd do away with Prop 13, the initiative process. We would be taxed just to whatever limit they wanted to tax us to. And, hey, they'll balance the budget right on the backs of the retired and everyone else and our kids. That's what they will do. And we will become slaves to the government right here in California. It says Brown has said repeatedly that the state budget will be balanced with or without a tax increase. Right. You believe that? It says, either way, he told Rose, California is a buoyant, dynamic society, not some... I love this comment. California, this is what Brown told Rose. California is a buoyant, dynamic society, not some tired country of Europe. No, we're a tired state in America. It says, Facebook, Brown said, was invented... here's another good one. Here's what Brown said. Facebook... Brown said, was invented in California, not Texas, Arizona, or New York. When Rose told him the social networking site was created actually in Cambridge, Massachusetts, Brown hardly skipped a beat. Maybe so, he said, but they learned fast to get on a plane and get out to California, where all the other innovative people are. The fastest growing tech areas are in Texas and other states, not here in California. Even in Israel. Israel is doing amazing things because of the ability to, well, have freedom to operate. They have totally reversed the regulations and the controls they had in Israel, and they are attracting businesses from all over the world. And they are surpassing, and the inventions that are coming forth in Israel, California could have had. But here we are, Jerry Brown, saying that, well, Facebook was created and invented in California, only to be told by Charlie Rose, no, it wasn't. It was invented in Massachusetts. Our governor. He's also proposed that we go to a 4-day work week. Folks, again, smoke and mirrors. Utah already tried it. Doesn't work. And there are many, many reasons it doesn't work. It causes huge problems. But again, it's smoke and mirrors. They just want you to believe they are trying really hard to make this work. They are just doing everything they possibly can to solve California's problems because they haven't for the last 10 years. We have huge problems in California, and they don't begin to even think their way through this because they don't want to. They like the crisis. They like how they are now able to try and manipulate us into paying more fees and more regulations and higher taxes. That's what they want. They want that supermajority. Please give them the supermajority so they can just tax our homes however they want, our businesses however they want, just whatever they want. Just a simple majority vote with the Democrats, the progressives in our legislature. You know, something else, they go on to say that we have no other options. We have no options other than raising taxes. Well, how about rolling back? Let's start with rolling back, at least just putting on hold AB 32. Stop CARB from implementing all of these rules and regulations that are going to kill this economy further. It's already starting to slow down here, folks, and we're heading in the wrong direction. How about let's stop all the uncertainty and all this like minimum wage tied to consumer price index. How about health care? They've said right here in California, hey, we're going to get universal health care, single-payer health care right here in California, regardless of what the Supreme Court says. So we've got Dave Jones pushing for this. He wants this. They are pushing fast to try and get Obamacare instigated earlier right here in California. How about removing that uncertainty? How about all these right-to-work laws? In other words, wouldn't it be nice to be a right-to-work state? We would have businesses start to come in here. How about wage laws? All these laws that are controlling when and how and the time on taking lunches, for example, and hamstringing businesses' ability to compete, and even employees' ability to work the hours they want to work. How about high-speed rail? How about take that off the board? Because we are going to create our own bottomless fiscal pit with high-speed rail right here in California. And yet Jerry Brown, again, is hell-bent on implementing high-speed rail here in California, the train to nowhere. We're talking decades, if ever, to complete this rail, and it's going to cost hundreds of billions of dollars more than what they are saying it's going to cost. Why? You voted for it. How about reforming ADA laws, in the state, so we don't have these opportunistic ambulance chaser, attorneys running around suing small businesses, extorting money out of them, and they're either closing their doors or basically firing people because they can't afford the lawsuit, laying off people. Again, uncertainty in California. Why aren't they working on these issues that can create jobs and wealth in California? The answer to our budget problems is an expanding tax base. That tax base, folks, is shrinking, not expanding. Another simple thing. How about reducing or doing away with the property tax on equipment that a business purchases? Manufacturing. This is the worst manufacturing state to do business, to manufacture in the country. You buy $1 million piece of equipment, you pay for it, you pay the tax on it, but then they nail you with a personal property tax in your business. Ongoing. So you buy equipment, and the taxes never end here in California. Other states, they don't have it. So how do you compete with that? You do away with it. Folks, I'll be back again probably next Tuesday with another segment. I'm Mark Montgomery, signing out.
The Mark Montgomery Show.